Questions?
In Freedom from the Known, Krishnamurti says, "Do you know that even when you look at a tree and say, 'That is an oak tree,' or 'That is a banyan tree,' the naming of the tree, which is botanical knowledge, has so conditioned your mind that the words come between you and actually seeing the tree? To come in contact with the tree, you have to put your hand on it, and the word will not help you touch it." So my question is, what does it mean to actually see the tree?
Good question, and because it's very central in Krishnamurti, he uses this this, let's call it a directive or a question. Have you ever seen a tree? Right? He uses that throughout his lifetime. It's a very central part of his teaching, and it's difficult in the beginning. I know because I went through it myself. To really understand what is he trying to get to here. Because it's kind of obvious, yeah, of course, if you have the word oak or the word pine or whatever, that's not the same thing as a tree. The map is not the territory. The metaphor is not the thing. The word is not the thing. But that's pretty obvious. What's not so obvious is what he means by, have you ever seen a tree? Have you ever touched a tree? And here, what Krishnamurti is doing is he's jumping like several steps, many steps actually, and getting to what it's like to see a tree when you're free, right? When you're free from the known, free from the mind, free from the concepts, free from the ideas, and of course the labels. And so what he's referring to is that when you look at nature, and your mind is free, then you don't see trees and flowers and birds. You see I don't know how to put it, because see, we have to use language to communicate. You see a perfection of let's see. You see, first of all, you see living creatures, gorgeous living creatures that are equal to you, that are part of you, and as a matter of fact, are you, but ultimately. But what he's asking is, have you ever seen the life, the beauty, the intelligence, just the sheer intelligence that is represented by a tree? And it's more like, have you ever grokked it? And grok in the sense of, this is going to sound weird, but in one of the original definitions of grok, it includes understanding something fully, knowing it very, very well from its own perspective, to the point to where you almost merge with it. And so he's referring to, have you ever seen a tree such that tree is... have you ever seen a tree in full consciousness would be the simplest way to put it. Because in full consciousness, it becomes something different. It's part of one thing, and that one thing is your consciousness, or your is the wrong word, of consciousness, period. And so he's using English to try and point to it, and he doesn't, given his history, it's understandable, right? Being raised by the Theosophists and to be made, high priest of some crazy British cult. He's not interested in going over all those steps with you. He just wants to know, have you ever seen reality, really? Or have you just looked at an image that your eye gives your brain? It's very difficult. You can see why he wants to do it this way, but if you're fully awake, what you see is so different than what you used to see as a tree. It's like you've never seen a tree before. I remember I seen a young child. Now I've seen probably hundreds of thousands of children, if not more. But it's like I've never seen a child before. And it's like, it's so qualitatively different that even though it's the same object, the same creature, a child or a tree or a bird, you've never seen it before. And in this case, he's talking about actually touching the tree, and that's true too. I mean, if for any one of the senses, it's true. And now that I think about it, it's akin to it's not the same as, and it can't be compared to, but experiences on large doses of hallucinogens can point in that direction, but it's not the same. That's very important. You can't get there that way. But so it's as if you have never experienced these living, intelligent, gorgeous creatures until you've understood what they really are and what you really are. And in that state of union with them, now we're talking about seeing a tree, something along those lines. I think it's very difficult to understand. That's a good question because it's like core Krishnamurti. And if you want, we can go further into that, but that's the general gist of that. Does that make any sense?
It makes sense, yeah.
Okay.
Why is it different than on hallucinogens?
Which hallucinogen?
Say mushrooms.
Well, that's visual. That's sensory. That's and in high enough doses, it's confused. It's not clear. It's not pristinely. It's relatively superficial. I would say something like that. You're discombobulated on mushrooms somewhat. You've overridden and overdriven. You've turned up the gain on the sensory inputs, right? And there's not that peace necessarily of that passive understanding, right? That's the key. Maybe that's the key point. Mushrooms don't have the that peace that passeth understanding, that peace beyond peace, that peace that cannot be described, and they don't have they don't get you to the understanding that love and truth and beauty are all one. And so I say that hallucinogens in general, they tend to cone one down, and by so doing they block the wider, more comprehensive, more integral, because it's not perception, it's understanding. And that's where I'd say that I don't know of anyone that would argue with that. I mean, including, if you go to the Toltec and the Olmec, these guys who are, relatively contemporary masters of the hallucinogens, I think they would say the same thing. Follow up? Because mushrooms are getting really popular sense these days. Go ahead.
Right.
That's not to say that they can't be useful for some people. They can be very, very useful for some people. Right? I don't think there's any question about that. For some people, they're relatively safe, and you can't be silly. You can't take it if you're someone who's at all unstable or has a history of instability. And I'm not going to advocate the use of these things online anyway, right? For anybody. As a matter of fact, online, I have to say nobody should ever use them for anything. But some of the things you might want to worry about are triggering a bipolar disorder in someone who's vulnerable to that, anxiety disorders in people who are vulnerable to that, although they're used to treat anxiety too. I can't say I'd recommend some of these fly-by-night clinics that are popping up all over the place, because the guides themselves are not in a position to guide. You need someone who has a very deep understanding of reality themselves, in my opinion, or you're only going to get what you pay for, right? So you're only going to go as far as the guide has, and some of these guides are they're in it for God knows what they're in it for. I don't want to impugn anybody unnecessarily, but well, let's see. A healthy young man, and let me just describe history. In history, healthy young men and women would use these, and virtually no problems arose unless they had a history of mental disorder, or unless they were severely character disordered. And there was no need for to go into a clinic and blindfold yourself and do all kinds of, pay a bunch of money, and lie down on a table and get told, oh, I don't know what they get told, but you don't need to be told anything. Frankly, you should learn for yourself. Is how it was looked at historically. And I'm speaking historically only because I don't want to get in trouble with the YouTube authorities unnecessarily. And I think they have, I think you can get my gist. So the notion of going to a clinic, which already is the wrong context, clinic, and the notion of going to somebody who does this as a new career choice, they're going to guide people on mushrooms. I don't know. I can't generalize too much, right? But in general, for the people that I have known, the ones that were spontaneously interested in hallucinogens were not the kind of people that necessarily needed someone to pay someone to experience them. And then the other thing that happens is sometimes, and this is a real travesty, is they're taken indoors. That's a mistake, in my opinion. You want to get away from the mind of man. You want to get away from mental constructions and ideas and thoughts and constructs and even objects that are built by man. In the beginning, at least, because you want to get in touch with the words of God. So the tree is a word of God, right? It's the embodiment of reality. It's truth itself. Look at it. And then so let's see. So you don't want to isolate yourself from that, and you don't want to put yourself in a room with a potted plant, because you might start crying for the poor plant, because that's very artificial. So being in nature would be essential. Dosing would be essential. The company you keep would be essential. Your mindset, your attitude, if you're doing it because you want to be more productive at work, you want to be better with spreadsheets and stuff like that, well, it might work temporarily in a very, very low dose, but that's a horrible waste for some people of the potential. And so I'm not advocating any of these things. I hope that's coming across, but the potential of them is enormous for the right person and the right time and the right circumstances, or the right preparation and the right environment. And so those guidelines would be kind of like that. The purpose is to get closer to yourself, to nature, to God, to truth, and the beauty will be obvious, right? So you don't do everything in the opposite direction. Put yourself in an enclosed environment with people who are clinical, or people who are doing it for the money, or doing it for the I don't know. And maybe I've said enough. Maybe I haven't said enough. Maybe I've said too much. Maybe I haven't said enough. Let me ask if there's any questions. Questions, follow up on
that. No follow up on that. No.
Okay. Well, hallucinogens are a very important question, especially these days, as they're becoming more and more prevalent. And I probably should answer more questions about them, because they are important and they're moving onto the landscape very, very rapidly. All right. Next question.
Question on the Tao Te Ching.
Okay.
Just, I guess, a clarification on a couple ones. In chapter 3.
All right.
Should I read the whole thing and I'll ask my question?
Let's see. What's the name of the verse or the chapter or whatever you want to call it?
Non-exalting cleverness.
Non-exalting cleverness. Okay, go ahead.
The non-exalting cleverness causes the people not to contend.
I tell you what. Let me read it because let me read it because I think the sound might be better. This is the third entry into the Tao Te Ching. It's called Not Exalting Cleverness. Not exalting cleverness causes the people not to contend. Not putting high prices on hard to get goods causes people not to steal. Not seeing anything to want causes the mind not to be confused. Therefore, the government of sages empties the mind and fills the middle, weakens the ambition and strengthens the bones, always keeping the people innocent and passionless. It makes the sophisticated dare not to contrive. Action being without contrivance, nothing is disordered. It makes the sophisticated dare not to contrive. Action being without contrivance, nothing is disordered. Okay, beautiful. Now, what's the question on that?
Yeah, so I wanted clarification on what it means. What does weakens the ambition mean in this context, and keeping the people innocent and passionless? Because at first read it, it sounds like, like making the people be sheep. And so I don't know if that's what that means, and if it is.
All right, so good question. So I'm going to reread that section. Therefore, the government of sages empties the mind and fills the middle, weakens the ambition and strengthens the bones, always keeping the people innocent and passionless. All right, so most of our population, most normal people are not hugely ambitious. A normal country historically was not one that was full of people crawling all over each other trying to get to the top. It was more localized. There was small villages and small farms, or large farms and small villages, and so people just kind of they lived their lives. They didn't. The government wasn't part of it, right? They didn't. They would get up in the morning. They tend to their animals, tend to their fields, and then go to market and sell their goods, and then go home and eat and sleep. And it was a very simple, peaceful life. It was a much more local, I guess is the way to put it. We've lost that because we've become so highly urbanized. And we're literally stacked on top of each other, and we're competing now, and we're doing things that are in this context, relatively artificial. We're trying to promote ourselves on social media. We're trying to, make an extra $1 million or $2 million in finance. We're doing financial management consulting. We're doing all kinds of stuff that ultimately will fall down if there's an economic collapse, right? And so keeping the people passionlessness. So the notion of passion as a virtue, that's a very interesting one, because in you notice, I think it was about 30 years ago, people started talking about following your passion, following your bliss, and passion became a big positive. And I think that's because the people were so anemic that they needed passion. And they thought that, well, if you'd had passion, then you wouldn't need to take your Adderall or something like that. And so keeping the people innocent and passionless just means keeping it simple, right? Not getting all caught up in, I'm going to be the number one lead for the NBA, right? The most valuable player for the NBA, or I'm going to play, forgive me, I don't follow it close enough, center for the Chicago Bulls, or I'm going to be the president, or I'm going to be, the richest man in the world, or the richest man in Texas, or whatever. So those kinds of things are actually artificial, right? And they're made up of a culture that and I'm not saying our culture is artificial, but it's very competitive. Not all cultures are competitive, nor need they be. And so when you have a small group of people, and they're content to provide for themselves, each other, right, take care of each other, in a small town or village. It's not perfect. It's not even necessarily ideal. Well, maybe it is ideal for humans to live in smaller groups. You didn't need all this passion. I mean, what would you use it for? And so, ambition and greed. What's the difference between ambition and greed? You'd have to spend some time thinking about that. And so I think what he's referring to here is that people aren't so complicated up in their minds, right? They fill the middle. They take care of the necessities. What's needed, and they weaken the ambition and strengthen the bones. There, it says it right there. So you weaken the ambition, right? But you strengthen the bones. So you're healthy physically, but you're not so, you don't feel the need to like crawl over somebody else to get to the top. It's not as competitive. And I'm not trying to sing like, I'm not trying to say that things were idyllic in agrarian times or non-urbanized times. But they were closer. I'll attest. I grew up in a small town. It was closer. I mean, it wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. There were times when I hated it growing up in a small village, really. Well, small town. But it's better than what people now are killing themselves. They're drugging themselves. They're drinking themselves to death. They're hurting each other in order to get ahead. They don't know each other. Everybody's a stranger. And they're looking for solutions through tech or through complex, let's take over the world, let's rule the world, right? This kind of insanity. And so I guess maybe what it's pointing out to us here is that there's another way to do things that's more local, more simple, more intimate, because you know who you're dealing with every day. You have a baker that bakes bread. You have a farmer that grows wheat. You have a mother who raises children with the other mothers, right, and fathers. And it was a different time, and maybe, just maybe, it was a better time because people weren't living always in anxiety and fear, and so their minds weren't all. Their minds are not where they live. They live in the bones of the body, right? Just eat and sleep and love, take care of your kids and each other, something like that. But again, this is contemplation, follow-up. Or did that help, I hope?
Yeah, that helps.
We see passion as a virtue. It's just as easily seen
Right.
as a vice, right? And so if you look at passion not as a virtue, which it is in modern times, that's how it's typically used. It can also be used as a vice. Right?
I see.
Okay. Question?
Yeah, another one from the Tao Te Ching, chapter 10, carrying vitality and consciousness.
Okay. How long is it?
Maybe 20 lines.
All right. Let me read it in case the sound is better. Oh,
Sure.
Which one is it? I'm sorry.
10, carrying vitality and consciousness.
All right. All right, it's a little bit long. Bear with me. Maybe 20 lines. Carrying vitality and consciousness, embracing them as one. Can you keep them from parting? Concentrating energy, making it supple. Can you be like an infant? Purifying hidden perception. Can you make it flawless? Loving the people, governing the nation, can you be uncontrived? As the gate of heaven opens and closes, can you be impassive? As understanding reaches everywhere, can you be innocent? Producing and developing, producing without possessing, doing without presuming, growing without domineering. This is called mysterious power. Gorgeous. What's the question?
So again, clarification on one part.
Good.
The part concentrating energy, making it supple. Can you be like an infant? What's the meaning of that?
Oh, here's the book. Okay, elsewhere in the Tao Te Ching, they talk about the fact that an infant, is very, very supple, very, very flexible, right? But it can also be very, very strong. I mean, if you ever if you ever had an infant grab your finger, I mean, those guys are strong, and they can be very firm, right? And they talk about the erection of an infant, right? They have these little penises, but they can get really, really hard. And back in those days, that was a big deal. This was before Viagra, or whatever it is. And so, but the point is that these the strength and the suppleness, the softness and the hardness, the firmness and the softness or suppleness are part of the same thing, right? An athlete who's not supple is worthless, but an athlete who can't be hard, right, is also not very useful, right, in general. So what's the line again?
Concentrating energy, making it supple.
Concentrating energy, making it supple. Can you be like an infant? So that's what I would say about that. So they talk in this passage. They talk about energy and they talk about consciousness. But we're talking right now about energy. So if you look at it, people are at a real disadvantage if they've never spent time with a human infant, because human infants are incredibly strong. I mean, you ever heard one yell? They can fill up a house easily with their little bitty lungs. And they're when they grab onto something, it's very hard to get them to let go of it. The grasp reflex and all that stuff, they won't let go. And they're muscular little guys, And so their energy, and they're small, but the energy is concentrated. But then when they do relax, or when they want to relax, they just, they're totally supple. They're not. There's not an ounce of tension in their body. So they're incredibly relaxed when they're relaxed. Incredibly supple. Their bones aren't formed yet, right? So they're kind of like in their joints. They can move around. They can do a lot of stuff. So unfortunate that our culture doesn't allow us to spend more time with infants. But if you know them, that they're both very, very energetic. They have concentrated energy, and also in that energy is potential. So within this little package, you've got this incredibly strong creature that's incredibly flexible and subtle, and it's able to do and grow into anything. It can grow into this extraordinary creature, which is the adult human, right? And so it's asking, can you be like an infant? Can you concentrate your energy such that you just got all of the power, just like inside you? You got the power, but you don't necessarily use it. I think now of a martial artist who's a master, and you can tell how he walks, that he's got all this power within him, right? It's like watching a great athlete walk in too. They've got incredible amounts of energy, but it's all concentrated in their bodies, and it's you can almost feel it when they walk in. Or a ballet dancer is another example. But then their gait and their posture and their way of being is totally relaxed and subtle and supple. You see what I'm saying? So they're like an infant. They've got all this power concentrated, but their bodies are relaxed. They're supple. They're relaxed. They could do anything, but at the moment they're not doing that. So they're like an infant, right? They're just relaxed and supple. Let's see. So what it's counseling is saying here, to carry vitality and consciousness, which is the name of this chapter, and I'm going to keep showing the title of this book because I hope people buy it. It's the best translation by far in English of this particular text, because it's from the original, not from a translation of a translation of a translation. Concentrating energy, making it supple, can you be like an infant? Purifying hidden perception, can you make it flawless? So there's all kinds of other good stuff in here. So, but follow up on that. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, yeah.
Okay, good. Are there follow-ups on that, or any other parts of this beautiful passage?
I could ask a lot of questions about this passage, I think.
Ask one more, just for fun, because we're here, and it's a beautiful passage.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. The one, as the gate of heaven opens and closes, can you be impassive?
Yeah, that's a huge one. I'll give this the interpretation that's useful for students of the way. The Sufis, the Toltec, not so much the Buddhists, but they describe a moment of opportunity that occurs in the life, in a life. The moment to wake up, right? The opportunity appears, and probably appears to everybody. Most people don't notice it, right? Because they're preoccupied with something else. But this is a little bit more general than that. When you live the life, there are times when everything can be done, times when some things can be done, and times when nothing can be done. And this is true also in the Dharma, in the beginning especially. Because there are times when the gates of heaven just open. All of a sudden your perception is boom. It's like, holy God, it's like, whoa, you've transported to a new world, a new way of being, a new earth, right? Whatever you want to call it. And then there's times when it seems to close down, and you could ascribe it to external factors like anything from the weather to the politics to, domestic relations or whatever, but it has nothing to do with that. It seems as if there's seasons also in the facility with which one can apprehend what's there, and that's kind of like the gates of heaven open and closing, and you can't try and force it, you can't try and grab it, you just have to be there. So let me try and use a concrete example. A well-meaning young person wants to get closer to God, get closer to truth, right? And so every day she climbs a mountain in the forest, and it's quite a bit of work to get to the top of this thing, but she does it every day diligently. And some days she's climbing up there and she's just so preoccupied with her family or the problems that they're having, or the country or the city or the world or whatever, and she gets there, and it's beautiful. When she gets to the top of this small mountain, it's beautiful, but it's not, it's still a mountain, it's still the forest, and it's still the world. Now sometimes, though, she climbs up there, and for reasons, who knows what the reasons are, she gets to the top of that little mountain, and the forest is no longer the forest. It's a magical, enchanted, jewel-like, I can't give words to it. It's heaven, right? Heaven, right? And she goes, wow, thank God I did all this, because to see this kind of like a peak experience. She sees this and she goes, oh my God, this is why I've been searching, right? The beauty, the clarity, the peace, that patheth understanding. It's all right here. It feels like. And she has a peak experience, and then she goes home and goes, man, I'm glad I've been doing that. And then she does it again. And maybe for a few weeks, it's like that every time she climbs up. And I also on the way, right? And also when she gets back, it's like that, because she's woken up. But then she climbs one day, and it's just a mountain, just a forest again. Or something like that. I'm overstating it to try and make the point. But the point is, it appears that, especially in the beginning, that the gates of heaven open and close, right? It's more like, if you look at the sky, there's some days, if you're really interested in the clear blue sky and the beautiful sun, there's some days when you can see it, and some days like today when you can't see it, you just see it overcast, and sometimes when you can't see it at all because there's an eclipse or something like that. So these appear to have, especially in the beginning, an organic kind of opening and closing. Does that make sense? Oh, and then can you be impassive? That's the second part. So can you be impassive? So the immediate impulse is like, what's his name? what's his name? The comedian that woke up. Not Dana Carvey. He was the Joker. No, he was the clown. No, who was he? The Mask. Who was the Mask?
Oh, Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey. So Jim Carrey woke up, right? And he gives a little talk. You can see it on YouTube. It's kind of cute where he says, "Oh man, and all I can do is I want to get back there. I want to get back there." Right? So yeah, your impulse is to want to get back there as hard as you can, as fast as you can. Well, that's not going to work, unfortunately. That's not how it works. Instead, you have to be impassive, again, without the passion, and you just keep cultivating yourself, and it will open on its own. And you never know when, and you never know how, but it will. And so can you remain so if you try to grab it, you actually move further from it. Let's see. Can you be impassive? Yeah. So as it opens, it closes. So, and also, if you get too excited during it, right? Let's say you have a glimpse of reality, or let's say you have Kensho, right? Satori, whatever. If you get too excited, you're going to destroy it because your mind will start going. So you can't get excited in this work, and this is a real hard part for people. Exuberant, as much as we love exuberance and we love people to be very, very excited about what they're doing, and I've been there. And you can't help it in the beginning because you realize, oh my God, there's a whole world I've missed, and it's beautiful, it's gorgeous. But that works against you at the higher levels of consciousness, because the higher levels of consciousness don't include excitement and grasping. Both of those are and antithetical to understanding and to apprehension. So, like my teacher said, whatever you do, don't get excited. That's really important. And I think that's another reason why hallucinogens might not be beyond initial stages, introduction to the course, right? Hallucinogens oftentimes include the excitement. Especially for naive users, and that blocks higher perception. So let's read it again. It says, as the gate of heaven opens and closes, can you be impassive? So every line in this, by the way, this is the 10th verse or 10th chapter, however you want to talk about it in this book, the Essential Tao. 82 pages, the best 82 pages you'll find in your library, and it's full of advice, admonitions, directives like this. But what's confusing to people is it includes the personal and it includes the political because of the times in what it was written. So it gives advice to kings and it gives advice to common folk like us, right, or like me. Anything else on that?
No, I think that covered it pretty thoroughly.
Okay, sir. Is there any other questions today?
No.
All right. Okay then, sir. Thank you so much. See you later.
All right. Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye.